You're about to see a conversation that I had with a former college student of mine named Faith. And Faith shares with us how she and her family experienced a natural disaster while she was in college. You're going to hear her talk about how that trauma affected her and each of her family members very differently over the past 10 years. You're going to hear the specific pieces of what helped Faith to hang in there during college and actually finish the next few years of college after this natural disaster happened. If you're watching this and you're someone who's really struggling right now, whether it be with a really high level of stress or anxiety, as you're going to hear Faith talk about, please know that we do have a solution that can help you. I have a signature anxiety program that is designed to help teens and college students move forward with the next steps in their education and their friendships without having to wait, without missing out on life, without being held back by the mental health system. So if that's you, please check out the link below in the description and the pinned comment and share that with your parents. That's the first step to learning more about the program and learning 3 keys that can help you move forward. Without further ado, here's the conversation with Faith. Faith, so good to see you, and thanks for being with us here on the channel. And I always kind of frame these conversations for people if they've never seen one of these on the channel before, just to let them know that, although I am a psychologist for young people and I've been doing therapy for like 20 years with teens and college students, for anyone listening, Faith is not my therapy client. I am not Faith's therapist. This is not a therapy conversation. This is just a conversation between the two of us as people. So thanks again for being here, Faith.
Yeah, of course. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. And I should actually thank your dogs as well for joining us. So thank you to your dogs.
Yeah. They're here for moral support.
Moral support for you.
Or anybody, I guess.
For everybody. Oh, they're therapy dogs. Okay. Well, Faith, how on earth do we know each other?
We met on a random street corner one day.
That's right. I think I was selling peanuts.
No, we actually met. I was an undergraduate student at Vanguard University. I majored in psychology, so I was fortunate enough to take a few of your classes. I think I had 3 or 4 of them. And then after that, after graduation, went to Ecuador together for some school stuff down there. So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a distinct memory of like pushing a wheelbarrow up a hill with you in Ecuador.
I think I have a picture of that.
Yeah, I think I do too. I was really happy that I got to connect with you there as well as, in all of the classes that
Definitely.
we had together. And sorry, I just got distracted by your dogs. I love dogs so much. So how about we knew each other when you were a student, and can you kind of catch us up with like, where did life take you after college?
Yeah. So when I was an undergrad, I had an internship out in San Juan Capistrano. So after graduation, they kept me on their staff and provided some free housing for me, which was hugely beneficial. After about a year of doing that, I think that was a little after 2018 sometime, I ended up moving back to Northern California to be closer to my parents. And my sister had just had a baby, so I wanted to be there for that. I was actually working through a master's degree, and had networked with somebody who had his own practice that was willing to take me on once my master's degree was finished. And then I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods on the side. And then the store that I was managing for Dick's Sporting Goods ended up closing at the end of 2019. So me and my then boyfriend at the time had to make a decision and decide, were we going to try to stay in the Sacramento area? Did we want to move further north or further south? But his family is actually from Colorado. And so we made the decision to just pack up everything and move out here. So I've been in Denver ever since. Just transferred stores at a Dick's Sporting Goods out here. Finished my master's degree. Took a little while because COVID kind of turned some things upside down. And then a friend of mine from Dick's Sporting Goods had left and she got another job. And when they had an opening, she reached out to me. So I now am the learning and development coordinator for our customer service team for the state pension agency. And that's kind of what I've been up to and where I've been, and I love it. And I don't know what'll happen next, but for now, I'm pretty content.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you love it and that you're
Mhm.
content. And I suppose technically none of us know what will happen next, myself included.
Yeah,
So that's fair.
right.
Um, and at least when we were messaging to set up this call, you sound like you're really loving Colorado. I mean, what are
Mhm.
you loving about it?
I've never been a huge fan of the heat, and because of the altitude in Denver, even if it's hot, if you step in the shade, there's a noticeable difference. It's like a solid 15-20 degree drop. Whereas in California, Northern California, where my parents are, if it's 100 degrees outside, it feels like 98 degrees in the shade. And I can't stand that. So just being able to cool down in the summer is a huge perk. But I also love the access to a lot of sporting events, as well as a lot of the mountain ranges. There's easy places to get to hike and fish and get outside with the dogs. And so that's been a huge benefit.
Okay. So the difference in weather and the
Yeah.
niceness of shade, and then also the outdoorsiness.
Hmm.
Love it.
Yeah.
You also mentioned getting a master's degree. What did
Yes.
you get a master's degree in?
General psychology because I couldn't figure out how to narrow it down. So I figured I'd just cover all the general bases.
Sure, you mastered it all, huh?
Yes. No. But I have a pretty good framework for things, I think.
Yeah. Well, even as an undergrad, you had a very good framework for things. So,
We'll see. Didn't always feel like it, but here we are.
yeah. Okay. So there was this process of moving from California to Colorado, now living your best life in Colorado and being a very important person at your job, as you
But
messaged me. I did want to ask you about that. What is your very important? Where does that part come in? The yeah,
so I came in as a customer service representative. So I answered, it's an inbound call center. So I answered um, public employees' questions about their own pensions, helping them plan their retirements, working with what happens after you retire and kind of the payment setup for those annuities. Um, and then quickly moved into this learning and development position. So my official title is training analyst. It doesn't feel right because I don't analyze a whole lot. But I do a lot of the onboarding for new hires and then continual training and development. Our pension agency is in a position of massive growth right now. So I've been pulled into all these little projects from all the other teams and divisions, which I love. But I also miss when I had an empty calendar and nobody ever needed anything from me. So now, if I'm done with a new hire class, people see my calendars open. And like this week, I had 13 meetings that were fine. They were fine. But yeah, I accidentally became important.
you've always been important, but now you're accidentally important at your job, and I
Yeah,
really love it for that for you. I don't know if you love it, but I love it.
it's,
Yeah,
it's okay. There are those days where I'd just rather not be here, but that's okay.
yeah. Well, you're needed, I suppose,
Yeah.
in your workplace. Yeah. Um, okay, so did you grow up in California with your family? Like, can we dig a little bit into your backstory there?
Yeah. So early, we moved around a lot. Um, so from what I can vaguely remember and have been told from my mom, we were mostly in Northern California. we were in Alabama for a little bit, we were in Texas for a little bit, and then came back and settled in California. So um, my parents met when I was 5 um, in a little tiny town in Northern California. Um, and so when they got married, we were living in my dad's super small hometown where everybody knows him and his brothers and all my aunts and uncles and cousins. Um, and when I think I was in the 7th grade, is when he got a different job that moved us a little further north, but still in an environment where everybody was very familiar with who my parents were. And then obviously wound up at Vanguard. So um, didn't travel too far from home. Um, yeah, so Colorado's the furthest and the longest that I've been away from my immediate family for sure.
Okay. And how long have you been in Colorado now?
We moved right in January of 2020, so almost 5.5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so growing up, you moved around to different states. Sounds like your family kind of settled in California for a
Hmm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel privileged in the sense that I knew you as a student, Faith, and so as we're talking about this, I have memories of things that you've shared with me about California, and about your family, but I'm not wanting to pry into anything you might not be comfortable talking about. But if I just say like difficult moments, like are there any difficult experiences that you think about from growing up that you would feel comfortable sharing with us?
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest thing is I'm the oldest and always have kind of been the fix it person for my family. Um, for the most part, I tend to be the mediator. So when two or more people are frustrated with each other, I'm usually the level head in the middle of it and try to get it resolved because I do not enjoy conflict. um, and so when we got to a point where my siblings and I were at different schools, it was hard for me for a little bit not knowing what they were doing or if they were okay. So then when my parents moved us into a private school, we all ended up in the same place. So I was kind of able to keep tabs on everybody. Um, and that made me feel a little more secure as an older sibling. So graduating and then leaving all of that to go to college, I was really excited about, but I was also really nervous because I was going somewhere where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know, what that was going to look like with my family being far away because I'd never been this far from them before. So it's definitely an adjustment just getting used to a routine where they don't know what I'm doing all the time and I don't know what they're doing all the time. Um, so then finally, I kind of got in a groove where it was okay. Very thankful for modern technology where we could FaceTime each other or text or call all the time. That definitely helped make it easier. And then I think the hardest one was my sophomore year. There was a wildfire, which happened all the time where my parents are now, and we were pretty used to it. So I got some alerts and texts that oh, look, there's a big fire happening on the mountain, but nobody was really concerned about it. And then within, I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours, it completely blew up. So my family only had a couple of minutes to grab what they could and evacuate. They were all in separate cars. So there was a point where I lost contact with all of them. I had had several goodbye calls with a couple of them. And there was, I think, like a 3 or 4 hour period where I had no idea where they were if they made it out. Um, and I didn't feel like I could immediately leave school because it was either try to get a flight really quick and get up to Sacramento and see if somebody could get me into the valley where my parents were, or do I try to drive the 9.5 hours up there? So I ended up just kind of staying put, didn't sleep a whole lot. And then finally got the phone call that everybody did make it out. The only thing that we weren't sure of was one of my sisters was at work And so she didn't have a car with her. She ended up having to jump into another family's car. So she was completely separated. So trying to figure out who she was with and how to get her reconnected with everybody was a little bit of a challenge. Um, and I think some of the aftermath and what that did to my immediate family and just our personalities and our characteristics really shaked a lot of things or shook a lot of things. We definitely found more importance in being with each other and paying attention to kind of the present moment. Um, Trying to recoup everything that we had lost was challenging. I mean, we lost all of our family pictures, our birth certificates, social security cards. So trying to figure out how to get all of that replaced. And then just the way that each of us handled the trauma, it was very, very different. So I kept a lot of it internalized. My siblings acted out occasionally a little bit louder. Um, I think my dad seemed to stay pretty consistent through the whole process, but he also had his parents he was trying to take care of, making sure all his brothers were okay too. Um, and then my mom was a pretty steady presence through all of that too. So being that far away and having a hard enough time not knowing what was going on and being forced into a situation where I really had no idea if I was ever even going to see them again was probably the biggest challenge um, that happened while I was in college. So,
I cannot imagine going through the difficulty of just moving away for college, especially as the oldest sibling, where you feel such a sense of responsibility and oversight for your younger siblings. And then sophomore year to have a traumatic natural disaster like this
yeah,
for your family. And then you are like 9.5 hours away by car,
yeah,
can't really fly, can't be with them. Um,
yeah,
and then pretty much it sounds like losing everything in terms of physical objects, but having each other. And yeah, I cannot imagine. And by the way, Faith, how many siblings do you have?
I have four. I've got two younger sisters and a brother, younger brother.
Okay. And you mentioned that each of you seem to deal with the trauma in a different way. I think you said that you internalized it more. Your dad was pretty much like a steady presence. Some of your siblings acted out more. Um,
Mhm.
what did you notice in general about like what people did differently?
Yeah, there was a lot of expectation on how we should respond. Um, and that got really old really quickly. And so trying to navigate, my parents as leaders in the community put up a very strong front of we're okay, we're going to recover, we'll rebuild and move on, and struggling with all these things more deeply at home. I remember we had people that wanted to give us furniture, which is hugely appreciated, but we didn't have a house to put it in. We were staying, I was still at school. And then when I came home for the holidays, we were staying with my best friend's parents. So when they were trying to give them large equipment, there was nowhere to put it. And so trying to respectfully decline a lot of that hurt other people's feelings. Um, and at that point, a lot of us just kind of didn't care or prioritize that anymore. So I don't think we were always as gracious as we could have been in interacting with the community, but I think some of it was really justified as well. So,
It seems really tricky, maybe awkward to navigate, where
yeah.
I'm wanting to give other people the benefit of the doubt that, like, they, when tragedy strikes, people want to help or they want to feel hopeful. They want to be
Mhm.
charitable out of the goodness of their heart, but they can sometimes not see what you actually need or what you actually want.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, if you were given furniture, but you don't have a house to put it in, I can see the
Makes it challenging
disconnect
to take
there.
it. It's going to just sit outside in a random driveway.
Yeah. Or like, are we gonna now, pay for a storage unit where we didn't have one before? Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Um, so, and forgive me because I this was implied, but like it sounded like your house burned down entirely. Is that
Yeah.
the case?
Yeah, so my parents had moved back in with my grandparents, and this was a house that my grandfather built with his own hands. So my dad and his brothers grew up in it, and it was always our emergency plan. So if the apocalypse happened, everybody go to grandma and grandpa's. um, and so to have that safety net completely lost, not just for our immediate family, but for our extended family as well, um, was really challenging. And then my grandparents were both still living at that time as well. So I remember getting pictures and videos of my grandfather sifting through the ashes of the house that he
Mhm.
literally built with his own hands. um, and just watching them try to figure out how to navigate that was really challenging in a lot of ways.
What was it like to see your grandfather sifting through the ashes of the house he built with his own hands?
Um, he was always a very quiet guy. He really thought through all of his responses. I never heard him yell, or I don't recall ever seeing him get angry. And he was just this presence where when he did speak, we all were quiet and we listened to him. So the videos and the pictures that I got, because I wasn't up there for the cleanup portion of things, it was the same very solemn guy. But just knowing that this beautiful house that all of his children's memories are in, and knowing that at that point he wasn't going to build another house like that or even his own home again, just trying to imagine what he was processing, really broke my heart a lot.
Sounds so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And what was it like for you to not be there for that process of cleanup and going through the ashes or going through what remained?
Yeah, I had a lot of, I guess you could call it survivor's guilt, because I was still an undergrad, so I at least had a place to sleep. I did have a lot of my things with me. I didn't have a lot of sentimental things. I left all of those at home. Um, but trying to relate to my family because they truly lost everything, and I had some minimal things down where I was, but not wanting to, I guess, justify my own grief. So I let them vent, I let them talk and process a lot, but it was really hard for me to admit that I had things and I had things that I lost there too. Um, but also just the trauma of thinking your entire family is gone. I didn't want to put any of that on them because I didn't feel like me being distantly removed from it felt a lot safer to just keep my own struggles with me, down in Southern California. So a lot of my friends and some of my professors knew what was going on, and I was very open, with you guys. But I would get the videos and the pictures and things that they would find, and they're like, "Hey, is there anything you want us to try to look for?" And I just kept telling them, "No, there's nothing really. I think I have most of it here with me. So, just do what you need to do." And I put a pretty strong wall up just so I felt like if they didn't have to worry about me, that's just one less thing for them to worry about. And so they can do whatever they needed to do. And I would just kind of handle my own thing, where I was. So,
Mm.
mhm.
Well, I'm glad that you leaned into support down in California for those of us that you were sharing with at that time. And I
Yeah.
feel really honored that I could be one of those people for you. But when you look back on it now and you see how you put up a wall like that,
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
It would be very interesting to see what the recovery process would have looked like if I had been a little bit more open. Because there was a point, my sisters were really, really struggling, and justifiably so. And I felt like I couldn't quite relate. And there were a lot of fights that I didn't want to be involved in. And so it was easier for me to just let them push away or put up their own barriers. And I just kept the door open, at least for them. Um, but I know there were definitely opportunities with my parents where they asked how I was doing, and I think genuinely wanted to know. Um, and I don't know what it would have looked like if they knew how hard I was struggling. I think it could have changed a lot of conversations that we had during that time. Um, so I think there probably would have been better ways to still feel like I was protecting myself without burdening them, or trying to make it this like, ooh, who's the most traumatized, and turn it into a contest, because I don't think that would have been healthy either.
Trauma Olympics.
Yeah, drama Olympics. Um, I don't think that that would have been helpful either. But I do wish, I think it was fine that I kept my siblings protected, but I wish I would have been more honest with my parents on how I was doing. Because I think it could have. I mean, our relationship now is pretty strong, but I think it would have been another opportunity for us to lean into each other a little bit more, and give them the opportunity to really see me and where I was, and maybe it would have helped them to focus some of their energy on me, but I hate having attention. So, um, yeah, I think all in all, it kind of played out best case scenario. But yeah, there are definitely moments that I think if I was more honest, could have sped up the process a little bit for at least me and my parents.
It's a tough one because for some of us who don't want to be a burden
Yeah.
or we hate attention, um,
Yeah.
which by the way, if you hate attention, welcome to the YouTube channel. But
No.
you're like, so I'm so happy to be here. Um, but what I'm trying to say is, it can be so hard to like let other people see that we're having a hard time and let them in, even when they ask us. Um, and because I have known you, I know what a strong person you are and how you care for your people, and so I can see that that would be a real challenge. Um, this idea of not wanting to be a burden is a theme that I hear a lot of people talk about in therapy, and I don't know. Can you just like unpack that a little bit? Like what that means? Do you have a sense of where that comes from?
Yeah.
Can you kind of unpack that idea of not wanting to be a burden? What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where the root of it comes from. I always assumed it's just because I'm the oldest. And so I just kind of grew up naturally taking care of other people. And my parents did a great job. I'm not trying to minimize their parenting at all. But I just felt a lot of pressure to take care of my siblings, and somehow translated that to taking care of my parents, which in hindsight I feel like is so dumb. But I didn't really recognize that in the moment. And that really just followed me. I've always been the person, even in my friend group, of I want to make sure that they're okay. And if they ask how I'm doing, it's always I'm fine or I'm good. I got a little bold and I might say something like, "Oh, I'm a little stressed out, but it's a good kind of stress," to just kind of minimize it so other people didn't feel like they had to take care of me. There's a lot of hyper independence that happens. It's almost uncomfortable for me to be around people who care so much. um, but yeah, a lot of my stuff has just been I'm well aware of, not all of them, but the things that I struggle with. And some of those things can feel so heavy that the thought of putting that on somebody else, for me, doesn't feel like they're helping me carry it. It feels like I'm just passing it off to them and they're going to have to carry it by themselves, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And for some reason, I just flashed to like us pushing a wheelbarrow up the hill again, where it's like,
Yeah,
it's very, I don't have my therapist hat on. I'm just saying, like,
sure.
the way that you explain it sounds like it's either one person pushing the wheelbarrow or it's the other person. And like, you
Yeah,
can't do it together,
right.
uh, metaphorically. Like, it
Mhm.
just feels very difficult to kind of share a burden versus like, I just tossed it onto someone's back.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird because I don't have that expectation for other people. I would hope that if my friends were struggling or somebody I cared about was struggling, that I'm the person they would feel comfortable with sharing that to. Um, and I would never, expect them to think that it would be a huge burden on me. But at the same time, I think if I could, I would absolutely add their own stuff to me. I'm just not willing to share mine with other people. So it's a fun conflict.
It's a fun conflict. Is that what you
Yeah,
just
it's
said?
a fun conflict that I just have all the
Well,
time.
We all have our conflicts, and I just appreciate you being so honest about one of yours. Am I remembering correctly that you talked about being an Enneagram type 2
Yeah,
back in the day?
yeah, I'm a 2 with a 1 wing, a 1 and a 3 wing,
Mm.
if I remember correctly, but yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, I could always be mixing memories because everything around the time of COVID and before is a blur, but Ecuador was before COVID, and
Yes.
I just remember you I don't remember what the song was, but there was a song, and, you were just it was like this song that was, like, so warm and so hospitable and, like, inviting someone in to help them feel comfortable and at ease, and you were like, "This is how I want all of my friends to feel."
Yeah, yep.
I think I remember it because some of us had just climbed a volcano, and we were, like, shivering and
You
miserable
guys were gone forever. Uh,
and then, yeah, you guys gave me hot tea, and I just have this very visceral memory of that, and I think I remember you talking about that, but it
yeah,
relates to this idea, right, of, like,
right,
also, like, not just your fun conflict that you have, but also, like, the strengths that I see in you
yeah,
of how caring you are for people, but then, like, how caring you are, you have this, like, extra level of concern about sharing your I almost wanna say your baggage. We all have baggage, right? But sharing a burden with
right,
someone. Yeah, we all
yeah,
have things we're carrying.
mhm.
So I guess that's it.
Yeah, done. Check the box.
Um, okay, so going back to the wildfire,
Mhm.
what year was that happened?
That was the fall of I th I can't remember if it was 2015 or 2016, but somewhere in that window.
Okay. So almost 10 years ago because we're recording in 2025.
Yeah.
So I'm also thinking about families who might have, gone through a natural disaster.
Mhm.
Even here in Southern California, we had really horrific
Yeah,
wildfires in the LA County area earlier this year.
yeah,
But certainly there's been many natural disasters around the country and other countries as well.
mhm.
Can you kind of give us a view into like what does it look like for your family in the years since that wildfire?
It took a really, really long time, for us to just kind of find ourselves again. So much of, I think, our identity was in a lot of those memories. Um, and when we lost all of that, trying to figure out, okay, who are we individually, but also as a family, existing outside of those material possessions and the lives that we had before that happened. Um, Learning to be very patient with ourselves and with each other and being open to talking about those experiences and sharing them with other people and not in a way of like, oh, you lost your house, let me tell you about when I lost mine. But we did focused a lot more on like when there are wildfires and I have people on my social media that live in those areas, we like to share helpful tips. Like if you are not impacted by these fires but you want to give, here are some very realistic ways that you can help without burdening your friends and family that just lost everything. So I think taking our experience and using it to help other people seemed to have made one of the biggest differences. And then, of course, time healed a lot of it. There's definitely still triggers and still things that we struggle with from, almost a decade ago. But being patient, giving grace to each other, having patience for other people trying to help, even though they didn't really know how to do it effectively, um, and then trying to stay consistent in that over time, I think is what made the biggest difference. My family could probably say like 20 other insightful things that might be different for them. But being far away and kind of having an outside lens on the whole thing, those were some of the consistent things that I noticed over the years for sure.
Okay. But I invited you, Faith. I didn't invite your whole family, so I want
I
your
know.
perspective. So whatever the answer. Yeah, okay, so I wrote down, like, that it took a really long time
Yeah,
to find yourselves again, and it took patience for that to happen. You had to have grace with each other and with other people who were trying to figure out how to support, maybe
right.
didn't know. And then using your experiences to help other people seems like it was
Yeah,
a really powerful piece. Time, so the passage of time, just healing wounds and being consistent in those things
yeah.
over time.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who might be watching this and their family has been affected by a wildfire? Maybe they've lost their home or they've experienced some other kind of natural disaster.
Don't compare your recovery timeline with the other people that were immediately impacted. Um, it's very common. Everybody knows that everybody grieves differently. Everybody recovers from trauma differently too. So it's okay if, maybe your parent seems like they've recovered more and they're a little further on the timeline than you are. It's not your job to minimize your own experiences to catch up to where they are. Or if you feel like you're ahead and you're further along in the recovery process, it's not your responsibility to go back and drag your other friends and family members to catch up with you. There's ways that you can still help and support, but it's not your job to go back and fix them because only they can do that. It's your responsibility to take care of yourself. And eventually you will all get there and be on the same wavelength. Um, but there's no definitive timeline on how long it takes for that to heal. And it also doesn't mean that you won't have those moments. Like right now, I feel like I'm in a really good place. Wildfires or seeing them on the news doesn't trigger me the way that it used to. But there's still days where sometimes there's one specific news story or an image or a scent that, for whatever reason, brings me straight back to that day. Um, and that's okay too. It's really hard, um, but it doesn't minimize the progress that you have made. um, and your experience isn't minimized or shouldn't be minimized based on the progress of the people around you either.
Such a powerful point. Don't compare your recovery timeline to other
Yeah,
people. It's also not your job to go around and try to fix other family members or drag them onto the timeline further
yeah,
when they're ready
yep,
for. And also, if you have a day where you're triggered by something, that doesn't discount how far you've come in recovery or how much healing you have done. It's just maybe a trigger is just a difficult moment.
yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed you've used the word fix a few times, Faith.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm like, fix it, Felix. That a
your fix
thing
it
from Wreck It
Felix
Ralph. I think Wreck It Ralph was that like a Disney Pixar movie, and that was one of the characters. Yeah,
was
I
fix
try
it
not to
Felix.
be fix it. He's like his whole job in the video game is to fix everything that Ralph wrecks, and so they just call him Fix It Felix. And so that's one
Okay.
of my reminders to myself of I don't have to be a fix it Felix all the time. It's okay to just be and not have to do anything.
Okay. Powerful reminder. I have heard of Wreck It Ralph. I didn't know that there's a Fix It Felix. And
Yeah.
so, can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to just like be, not have to do, not have to fix it?
Yeah. I was so used to people coming to me and venting to me with the expectation that I would give some profound words of wisdom or support, or here's your next steps and here's what you need to do. And sometimes people just want to vent. So, one of the things that's helped me is if somebody wants to talk, whether it's a family member or a friend or a coworker, um, if they want to talk, I'll preface a conversation with, do you want to vent or do you want me to fix it? And I don't always use that language, but give them an opportunity because sometimes people just want to vent and they just want to feel heard and feel validated. So it's not that I don't say anything, but instead of focusing on, yeah, you're really frustrated, here are the next steps or the things that we can do to get you not frustrated. Sometimes it's okay to just listen and be the sounding board and just be support.
Yeah, and it's so wise to clarify that, like, at the front end of the conversation so you know what that person is looking
Yes.
for.
Yeah.
I think that also helps us to not work harder than we need to, I guess I would say.
Yep.
Like, I hope it relieves the
Yeah.
burden from you because otherwise you could be scrambling to think about, I don't know, advice or someone else's next steps, and they don't even want that.
Right. Yeah. They just want an outlet. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm I'm getting a lot better at that too. So
Yeah, certainly sometimes people just wanna feel heard and feel seen, and
yeah.
you give people the gift of listening.
Yeah.
I'm also sitting here marveling at the fact that you were in college when this wildfire happened. Like, how the heck did you
Uh,
you know my question, how the heck did you make it through college? Because college is hard
yeah.
enough without your family's house burning down. So how the heck did you get through sophomore, junior, senior year?
Yeah. I stressed out really, really hard. And when the fire happened, for whatever reason, remember it happening on a Friday or a Saturday. And I remember that Monday, I had some pretty major assignments due. And I think I might have even had a couple of tests. And I had worked on a lot of it. I had drafts. My plan for the weekend was to kind of get a final edit, finish studying, and be good to go Monday morning. And that's completely derailed all of that. I did not sleep literally at all for like 2 days. Um, and so I remember finally getting the courage to draft an email to all of my professors, letting them know what was happening and that I wasn't going to be in class that Monday. And if there's any way to get extensions on things. And I remember rewriting that email, I don't know how many times, because I kept feeling like I had to justify it to them. Um, and I think all I could have said was, "There's a family emergency. I'm not going to be here. Can I get an extension on the assignments?" And that probably would have been sufficient enough. So I don't know. I might have gone into too much detail, but I just remember every professor being so immediately supportive, um, offering assistance in whatever they needed, or whatever I needed, or my family needed. Um, and that took a lot of the pressure off of me because I knew, okay, no matter what this looks like, if I'm going to have to drop out and go back home, I'm going to have support in that decision. If I'm able to stay, I also have support in that decision. My academic advisor definitely walked me through options. I was still kind of in that window where I could drop classes without it counting against me. So coming up with realistic plans on how can I make this plausible if I don't go back home. Um, and that support just continued. Vanguard's a very small school comparatively, so I was fortunate to have a lot of recurring professors. So everybody was pretty familiar with where I was at. And then I felt pretty confident if I needed extensions, if I needed to not be on campus and be somewhere else. Their immediate support really made that easy for me to make those decisions for myself and not feel like I was adding more to their plate of, you guys are going to catch up on all these tests and grading papers, and then mine's going to come in a week later, and now there's just another thing for you to do. Um, yeah, so that immediate support, I think, is the only thing that got me through it. I was able to stay. My family kind of gave me that relief to just stay and finish it. But yeah, I just knew throughout the next 3 years that whatever I needed was going to be met in one way or another. So,
In hindsight, I am so grateful that you took the risk somehow in the midst of like 2 nights of not sleeping and all of that
mhm,
incredible stress that you did email your professors.
yeah,
I mean, a natural disaster like a wildfire is one where it's like people know the state is on fire, so it's not like we all have a
It's not
context
made
for
up.
this, you know what I mean? I know it's not a moment where you're like thinking rationally, but it's like, we know you're not making this up.
Yeah.
It's not like finals time where everyone's grandma died.
Right.
Sorry, that does happen, but yeah, we all
Yeah.
know there's a natural disaster, and I'm just really glad that you did reach out and that you got that immediate support, and
Yeah.
also it sounds like that permission from your family to stay and do college, seems like it could have been, I don't know, was it a tough decision to stay or to go home? Like, were you torn about it until you got the permission, or what was that like?
Yeah. My immediate reaction was to just drop everything, go home, try to help handle whatever needed to be handled, and then eventually make my way back to Vanguard or maybe just a community college or somewhere at a later point in time. But then also really, really, really wanting to stay at Vanguard and not have to go home and kind of put my life on hold for everybody else. So I remember there were multiple conversations and multiple times I was asking the question, do I need to come home? And my parents were telling me, do whatever you feel like you need to do. And I didn't like that because I didn't know what I felt like I needed to do. And so finally, I had gone home that November for Thanksgiving. So they had found a new house at that point to move into. And so I at least had the visual cues of, okay, they're at least housed, they're back to doing their jobs and going to school. They're starting to get back into some of their hobbies. And then talking with my parents and still not really knowing if I need to put my life on hold to be there. And then just telling me, we're okay. We're in a good position. It's not your job to try to fix everything or hold it all together. So, they thought it was best for me to continue my education, and just having that verbal confirmation from them that it wasn't going to be held against me. Nobody was going to blame me for things falling apart. Um, Gave me a lot more of that freedom to go back to Vanguard and finish the next couple of years there. So
Okay. So just seeing that they were okay, that they had a place to live, they were
mhm,
secure, provided for, and then also their verbal confirmation of like, you don't have to take care of us, you don't have to fix it. I'm not going to blame you for
right.
things. You can stay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then, so you finished sophomore year somehow.
Yeah.
Okay. How far into sophomore year was this? Do you
This was
remember?
early. This was in September. So I think we had been
The
in classes
beginning?
for, yeah, it was September 12th. So we had been in classes for like 2, maybe 3 weeks.
Oh my word. Okay.
Yeah. And
Which
so I
also
kind of had
meant,
this little, yeah, short stats. It's like, I just need to make it to December because then I'll at least have finished a semester. And then from there, I've kind of finished what I'm doing right now. So if I can make it to December, that just makes an easier transition for me without having to drop all these classes I already started and paid for, basically. So,
yeah.
yeah,
So being like 3 weeks into the semester also meant that some of your professors maybe didn't know you as well as others. Like you had some repeat professors, but I'm guessing there might have
yes,
been some new ones,
yeah,
um,
there are definitely a couple of new ones for sure.
which can make it harder, I think, for students to reach out sometimes when professors don't know you as well. Um,
Yeah,
was it a helpful strategy to just kind of set a smaller goal of like, as long as I can get to December?
it helped make it feel a lot more manageable.
Okay.
So even if my family was still struggling, if I was able to at least finish a couple more months, then I would have another semester under my belt. Um, and then I could just not re-enroll for the spring semester. And that just felt like an easier transition for me in terms of moving out of the dorms, getting resettled back up there. Um, Having most of December when the campus is closed anyway to kind of get myself readjusted up where my parents were. Um, Yeah, so it definitely just focusing on that one semester rather than trying to imagine how I'm gonna actually complete my degree, definitely made it feel a lot more manageable for sure.
Okay. So just focusing on like this one semester, making to the end of the finish line of that semester
Yeah,
made it
yeah.
more
Even
manageable.
if I got C's,
I hate to
just
say
with the
what all
bare
my
minimum.
students say with C's get
C's get
degrees.
degrees. Yeah.
I hate that so much, but I can laugh at it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like it either, but that was kind of my, I just need to finish the semester, even if it's all C's. So at least I have something on my transcript, and then I can go. So
Yeah, it's realistic. It's a realistic goal.
yeah,
But okay, so I'm trying to add things up here because after fall of sophomore year, you did not move back, right?
no, no, I stayed. So I went up for Thanksgiving for that week, finished out the semester, and went back up after. I can't remember if we were done the first week of December. I don't know why that sounds right to me. It's like the first or second week of December, everything would kind of be wrapped up. And then we'd all do our little fall checkout with the RAs and then just be home for like a month. It felt like before the spring semester started. So I did go back up home for that period. Um, but I did re-enroll in classes for that spring 2016 semester. So I didn't take a break at all.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I was like,
Yeah.
I know that you continued, but you sounded like you were
Yeah.
almost visualizing like moving back home or something. So that's why I was
Yeah.
clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you had that winter break basically back home.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then what was it like going home for that winter break? Do you remember?
It was brutal. I did not have a good time. um, just because my whole family was a hot mess. And not just my immediate family, my extended family as well. Um, and so trying to enjoy being with them, but also not wanting to talk about this wildfire every living second of every living day um, was really rough. And then just trying to figure out, I felt like I just had a lot of links missing. Like I couldn't understand why family members were reacting the way they were because I hadn't been there through the entire process from start to finish, at least physically. So I felt like I was trying to catch up on where everybody was at and what were okay things to talk about, what were the topics we were trying to stay away from, because I didn't want to trigger anybody or have anybody just, start yelling. um, and then by the time I got everybody sort of figured out, I ended up driving back down to Southern California to start another semester. So it was a very exhausting winter break to say the least.
Yeah, does not sound like a restful winter break.
No.
Sounds
Mhm.
exhausting and brutal, like you said. And then like just when you figured out like what's okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about, where are like the minefield markers of
Mhm.
my family, then you
Yeah.
went back to school.
Huh.
And then somehow made it through spring semester of sophomore year
Yeah.
and junior and senior year.
Yeah.
What was helpful for you personally, Faith, in like getting through college those next few years? Do you remember anything? I know you mentioned like immediate support from professors.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Um, my junior year, my two roommates um, were friends from freshman year, even. So we knew each other really well. We got along really well. And I think that was my favorite year of undergrad was junior year, just living with them and the fun and the experiences that we had. They were such a huge support. They knew what my triggers were. They could tell if I wasn't okay, and kind of knew what to do to help me. Um, and then had some other friends too. So I started doing intramurals again, playing basketball multiple times a week, um, doing flag football and stuff, and starting to get involved in campus events again. Gave me something else to think about and focus on. And then being at school, nobody else, at least that I knew, had been through an experience like that. And so nobody was just, 20 times a day asking me, what was the fire like? And, did you notice anything is missing, or how are you recovering? I felt like I got to be myself again. And I didn't have to constantly relive the trauma on a daily basis. But knew that if I was struggling, that I had people that would also catch it. And I felt like I could be honest with them about it. Um, but yeah, definitely having that physical separation from my hometown where everybody else was struggling, um, I think was the most freeing thing for me.
So actually having the separation and being away was helpful in some regard.
Yeah, it ended up turning into a really positive thing.
Mhm. And also the roommates and friends that you had during
Right.
those years as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, it just really like struck me when you said I could be myself again. Um,
Yeah.
what did it mean to you to be able to be yourself again?
Yeah. Being home, I just felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells because I didn't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing that would make somebody else upset. Um, so finding the balance between admitting that I was really struggling with some of the trauma, but also being like, oh, I wasn't even here for it. So I'm totally fine. Whatever you need, I'll help you with and support you with. Um, and spending so much energy just trying to be the person that my family needed me to be and that my friends at home needed me to be, um, to not start any arguments or upset anybody. And then, getting back to school, I felt like I could be my normal, sarcastic, funny self. I could focus on classes and um, all of my hobbies and extracurriculars without feeling guilty for enjoying those things. And I don't think my family ever meant for me to feel guilty for being okay in some aspects. But I didn't feel comfortable sharing the positive things happening in my life with them because I was afraid it was going to come off as me bragging or, oh, you guys are having such a terrible time, but I get to go to college and I don't have to deal with it every day. So not having to have that internal struggle and just being free to get up, go get breakfast, go get lunch, go to class, go to a movie if I wanted to, go to the beach and have fun. Um, there wasn't a pressure to not enjoy those things. I feel like I could enjoy them fully. And I didn't have to watch what I said or what I did around the people that I was with either.
Yeah. So just being at college, there was that freedom to get up, live your life, do your day as your normal
Yes.
self, enjoy it, go to breakfast, go to lunch, go to the
Right.
ocean,
Yeah.
classes, extramurals, friends, and just hang out, have fun.
Yeah.
And I could definitely see how there would initially be a guilt struggle around that. Like you used the word survivor's guilt earlier,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you weren't physically there for the wildfire. But trauma is, I don't know, Faith, like trauma is a direct experience, but it can also be an indirect experience where, like,
Yeah.
just because you weren't physically there doesn't mean it, you already know that it was traumatizing, but
Right. Yeah.
even if in just a different way than it was for your family, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I'm glad that you were able to find a way to still have a normal, fun life in college without that guilt.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest moments that I remember happening that really brought me out of some of the struggles that were happening was one of my professors. I think it was like a speech and debate class or just public speaking, something like that. Um, but we were talking after class, and she kind of called me out on it. She straight up told me, she's like, "You're not okay, and you owe yourself the energy and the time it takes to be okay, regardless of what your family's doing." So, she pointed out that there's free counseling available on campus. or there's all these avenues in a close proximity. She was willing to help me kind of navigate that whole thing, and really challenged me to pull myself out of what was happening with my family and focus on me and focus on how do I make sure that I'm okay so I can be present for the things that are happening right now. Because what I didn't want was to look back at my undergraduate experience, which had so many highs, and have it just completely shadowed by this traumatic event and have that be the only thing that I remember, not remembering hanging out with my friends and going and getting donuts at 2 in the morning or whatever it was. Um, and yeah, just finding those avenues of how do I pull myself out of this without ignoring that it's happened and without just burying it within myself, which I'm really good at doing. Um, but kind of facing the music, if you will, and then pulling myself out of it and focusing on myself and not what my family was doing because that wasn't my responsibility.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
reminds me of a few things we talk about around trauma and around grief, one of which is in order to not have the trauma take over your entire undergrad experience and overshadow it, like it's sometimes a process of putting the trauma in the context of your life. So
Yeah.
contextualizing the trauma means like this is one aspect of my undergrad experience, but it's not the entirety of it because don't forget, my friends and I got donuts at 2 a.m.
Right.
Among many other fun memories, I'm sure.
Yes.
But we sometimes talk to therapists, sometimes say, like, after grief, after trauma, we find a new normal.
Yeah.
What do you think of that idea?
I think you do. Um, I mean, you can't, it would be impossible to go back to the exact same person that you were before that event happened because there are things in your brain that are permanently altered by that. And it doesn't mean that you can't learn to navigate your life with those things or overcome some of those triggers. It definitely takes a lot of work, but I don't think I could ever be the the helicopter sibling that I was, where I had to know what was happening in every single moment of every day and focusing on making sure everybody else in my life was okay before I was. Um, it's been almost a decade later, and I finally figured out that if I'm going to be successful in helping and caring for other people, I have to make sure that I'm okay too. Um, so a lot of the decisions I make now don't revolve around, oh, well, what will my parents think? Or what will my sisters think? Or will this, are they going to be mad because I came home for Thanksgiving, but I couldn't come home for Christmas? And just prioritizing myself. What are the things realistically that I can do? What are the events that I can be present for? And if not making myself feel guilty for that. Because it's their responsibility to live their life. It's not my job to live it for them. Um, and yeah, just really prioritizing what's going to keep me healthy so that I can be healthy for them too.
What would you say to someone who's watching this and they're struggling with making a decision? They're worried about what other people will think, other people being mad at them, and having a hard time coming around to what they're going to decide.
It's not going to feel natural because you have to go against the type of decisions you've been making for probably your entire life. Um, so there are certain tools that can be helpful if you have trusted individuals who are going to be able to maintain kind of a non-biased opinion. So those people that are going to be looking out for your best interest because maybe they don't know your family or your other friends as well as you do. Um, and their focus is on you and what's going to be best for you. I think talking through those options with that safe person is hugely beneficial. I also will turn my phone off or at least on do not disturb, and I'll go do something that I enjoy or that I feel like allows me to think more freely. So for me, being outside, whether I'm just driving or I'm standing in a park watching my dogs run around, being outside is the the environment where I think the best and I think the most clearly. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I don't have pictures of my family outside. But yeah, finding those safe places where you can either have those real conversations and feel like you can be honest with what you want to do or what you're feeling, either with a person or in a place where you feel like you can actually think through those options best, um, has been hugely helpful for me. And I know it's been helpful for other people that I've talked to as well.
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. Well, Faith, I have a final question that I tend to ask people as we're wrapping up these conversations. But before I ask you that question, is there anything more that you want to share or ask or comment on? Just throwing the ball to you.
Thanks. Um, no, I don't think so. Feel feel like it was all pretty thorough for the most part without trauma dumping. So, yeah, I don't have anything immediately at this point.
Yeah, I feel like I just threw the ball to someone that didn't want to be passed the ball,
The
to
ball at
use a
all.
basketball metaphor.
Thanks. This is
No,
my
I
nightmare.
absolutely I although I don't want you living your nightmare, uh, I do hope that it's honoring of your story and that, I know that you having the courage and the vulnerability to share, and make yourself uncomfortable in this way, um, is I just have every confidence that people who discover this will be encouraged by it and it will give them hope. Um,
Yeah,
so thank you for being willing to share.
of course.
And I also just want to say for anyone watching, Faith volunteered. Okay, I'm not like forcing her. She was not
I
coerced or
did.
paid or bribed or anything like that. Yeah.
No, you gave me several outs. I even pretended to be sick. I'm just kidding. I was actually sick the first time that we had this scheduled. But yeah, I had the option to say no. I wanted to say yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying yes. I feel very honored. Okay. Final question, Faith. What do you wish you knew when you were younger?
I circle back to this a lot, and not just because of the wildfire experience, but just because of who I was growing up and finally finding what I think is like my full authentic self outside of other people's expectations is it's okay to prioritize your own identity. It's okay to find hobbies or things that you enjoy, even if other people make fun of you for it. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, and people give me grief all the time, which is fine. But learning to accept that those are things that I enjoy, and this is what makes me happy, and makes me feel, I don't know, I don't want to say normal, but makes me feel healthy. Um, Learning to be willing to go through the uncomfortable work of finding who you are and just being completely okay with that would have been nice to know years ago. But I'm glad I finally got there now.
So it's okay to prioritize your own identity.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, Faith, thank you for being with us
of course.
so much that Faith shared with us and taught us by sharing her story. So, as a reminder, if you're watching this and you are struggling to prioritize your own identity, you are struggling with a really high level of stress or anxiety, please remember that I have a signature anxiety program that is designed to help you move forward with the next steps in your education and your friendships. And it's specifically for teens and college students because I've taken my 20 years of experience as a psychologist who does therapy with teens and college students and packed all those tools and skills and strategies into the program. So if that's you, the first step is to check out the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. Share that with your parents. It's like an introductory video where they're going to learn 3 keys to help you move forward. And they're also going to learn more about the anxiety program to see whether it would be a good fit for you. And by all means, please feel free to watch that as well.